Garen is unironically a challenger tier, pro tier champ. Right now he is 100%. Right, like he's been showing up in pro. He usually is not. Oftentimes when I talk about things, I talk about historics. League of Legends has a storied 13 plus year history, right? And so saying Garen is challenger tier right now, you're probably right because he is challenger tier. But for most of League's history, he isn't. And for most of League's history, the people who he is for tend to not be in challenger. And so the whole conversation I'm having about characters like Garen and Master Yi, it's not that Garen can't be challenger tier, right? The argument I'm making is not that Garen can't be challenger tier. In fact, again, right now he's pretty good. The argument I'm making is that if we were to do changes to Garen to make him challenger tier, assuming he wasn't, because again, many times in the past he hasn't been, that came at the cost of his silver players and his gold players and his lower MMR players, that wouldn't have probably been like the best results at the end of the day. It's like that's the conversation to have about Master Yi. It's not whether Master Yi is challenger right now or in the future or in the past, but mainly like, hey, he's not challenger right now. What changes would we have to do to Yi to make him challenger? And if we did those changes, would it come at a cost to his lower MMR players who love him? And if the answer is yes, in Yi's case or in Garen's case, it is probably not worth doing those adjustments. And as an example, with Garen, if we determined that Garen needed to be nerfed based on his current state, I'm not saying he needs to be nerfed. I don't have the context there. But I would bet that if we determined Garen needed to be nerfed based on his current state, we'd probably target nerfs that are more tilted towards his higher MMR players as opposed to just nerfing everybody on the character. Because again, Garen is intended to be for, the more straightforward players who just want to like hit a guy with someone with their sword and spin on them. Why or how does the Flash Summoner spell feel so good? Other MOBAs tend to limit similar Flash mechanics to out of combat, but League has kept Flash for almost forever. How does a spell that instantly teleports people make plays and or dodge them feel so good? I mean, Chronopolis, you kind of answered your question. It instantly teleports people to make plays and or dodge. Like, a lot of League of Legends is about the outplay, right? Like, League of Legends is a mechanically intensive game where you want to make big plays, and Flash is perfect for that. Every character in the game has a use for Flash. Many of them have really potent, exciting offensive uses for Flash. Many of them have very good defensive uses for Flash. And so giving any character an instant speed teleport tends to feel really, really, really good and tends to greatly complement their pattern in ways that they enjoy. And then often, because of the cooldown and things like that, it also tends to feel good to, I wouldn't say it feels amazing, but, if you get someone's flash, that tends to feel like a good result as well. It's like, I got their flash, sweet, right? So, like, flash just creates this great circle of interaction, both offensive and defensive, that tends to feel good for everybody with having, feel good for everybody. Now, it does come at the cost of something like, in Dota, you need to buy Flash, you need to buy a Blink Dagger, right? In League, everybody has it, but we can work the game around that. And kind of like, this is another thing you have to ask yourself when you're like making a game. So I'll tell you a story. Way back in the early days of League of Legends, Flash was OP and everybody was taking Flash. And there was a conversation, I wasn't there, but I've heard this story. There was a conversation between designers about removing it because it was just like, hey, this is too OP, there's no way to really balance it, and it's just not going to work. It's not, there's no way to balance the spell, so it needs to be removed so that there's real choices in the summoner spell system, and so that not everybody just has Flash. And there was a designer at the time, the designer who made Lux, who just asked a very good question. And the question she asked was like, hey, well, is the game not better with Flash, right? Like, we're talking about removing it for all these reasons, these design reasons, choice in summoner spells, make sure not everybody has a dash, all those things. But let's ask the opposite question of, well, in a world where there's less choice in summoner spells and everybody has this dash, is the game better? Is the game better when everybody has this flashy, dashy thing? And the answer that was come to was yes, the game is significantly better and more enjoyable. And so while Flash does compete against things like summoner spells choice, and it does compete against things like a character like Twitch never having a dash, the other end of that thing is very, very good for the game. The game is just more fun, more exciting, more enjoyable with Flash in it. And so one of the things you're always wanting to ask yourself as a dev of really any game is when there's something in the game that's, prevalent or too OP or changing in a way that you might not like or against certain intentions, you should ask your question. You should always ask yourself the question, like, well, is the game better that way? Just because something's OP does not mean the game is bad. Just because something has changed does not mean the game is bad. Just because something is taken all the time doesn't mean the game is bad. It could mean the game is bad, but it is your job as a game dev to analyze that situation and ask yourself, by going back to the status quo or going back to the original design goal, are you making the game better? And oftentimes the answer is yes. Oftentimes you are making the game better, but sometimes by doing that you're making the game worse. And in the situation of Flash, the game tends to be better when Flash is in it. And so I'm glad we kept it personally. So anyways, that's the thing to think about. Another thing that has come up in regards to this topic is mobility creep. There's always players who are going to come in and complain about mobility creep, and honestly, it's a reasonable thing to complain about. There's a lot of dashy characters who dash around and make you feel bad, and there's definitely some times where you put in too much mobility. ZERI had too much mobility on release. That's an example of probably bad mobility or creep. But if you compare overall average character in League of Legends nowadays to the average character in League of Legends when it shipped with 40 champions, the average character has a lot more mobility. There's dashes, there's move speed buffs, things like that. And I would argue the game is better because of that. I'd argue the average character having a dash makes the game better because League of Legends is a game where a lot of players are playing it for the mechanical outplays and exciting moments and things like that. And again, doesn't mean there aren't characters who have too much mobility. But the average character have some way to outplay, I think actually has been very good for the game over the years and made a more exciting experience for most of the people involved. And so I, as a designer, because I think that, the way I tend to think about characters is not what does Lucian give up for dashing. I tend to think about it, what does Brand gain for not dashing? What does Jinx gain for not dashing? Kind of the idea that if a lot of the characters in the game are going to be mobile, what do we give the immobile ones to make them feel strong and useful and fun? As opposed to being and all the immobile characters just have to be slapped with a Nerf bat because they're mobile. I'd rather, let them be mobile, again, as long as it's not too much, like ZERI, and instead find ways to bring up the immobile ones to be able to compete with them. That's my personal take on it. Are you in contact with content creators like Baus? No. I don't know many people, content creators on the League scene. I know some, but I don't know. I feel like I'm more reclusive nowadays. I don't talk to a lot of people inside the League scene nowadays. People are scary. But I do know some content creators. It's there's a lot of really talented content creators out there, create cool stuff. But yeah, I'd say I'm a bit more hidden from the League scene content creators nowadays.